The manhwa begins in an alley, where some thugs wonder how that rat ran so fast and express their frustration at his ability to escape. Then, one of the thugs asks if the protagonist went that way, to which the protagonist, hidden, expresses relief for having escaped, thinking that this time they would catch him. The protagonist apologized for being late, to which Hyun, annoyed, asked Ju Yeoman what happened to him to be so late, since they were busy at that time. The protagonist, nervous, told Ming that he had gotten into trouble on the way there. At Hyung's insistence, the visibly nervous protagonist tried to downplay the problems he got into. Hyung asked Ju Yeoman if the gangsters chased him for payment again and whether they knew he worked there. The protagonist denied they saw him arrive and explained he ran at full speed to get away from them. Hyun was glad they didn't catch him and asked him to hurry and get ready for work. Then, a coworker asked the protagonist to bring 2 bottles of soju to table number 5 and then clean table number 3 after washing the dishes. The protagonist seemed very tired when cleaning and doing everything they told him, and Hyun told Ju Yeoman he could leave work if he was already tired. The protagonist apologized and mentioned that he had to stay to finish together, as it was his last part-time job of the day. Then, leaving work, the protagonist thought about his tight schedule, with 2 classes in the afternoon and a tutoring job at night, and expressed his desire to get another tutoring job. Later, faced with tight expenses, he decided to save money for next month by buying food. Moreover, at school, it was revealed that the protagonist was in debt with usurers, and that his family had borrowed money, explaining why he was doing several part-time jobs. Faced with rumors, the protagonist reflected on their rapid spread and decided to take a nap before tutoring. When cleaning and doing everything they told him, the protagonist seemed very tired, and Hyun said, "Yeoman Appa seems to be very tired. Yeoman, you can leave work if you are already tired." The protagonist responded that he had to stay to finish together, as it was his last part-time job of the day and he would be fine. A classmate asked him how many part-time jobs he did, to which the protagonist answered that he didn't have many fixed ones because he often did tutoring and short-term jobs. The classmate told him he would die young at this rate. After a part-time job in the morning, the protagonist had 2 classes in the afternoon and a tutoring job at night, and thought it would be great if he could get another tutoring job. Walking into a shop, he thought the snacks looked delicious, but they were expensive and he was a bit tight with expenses that month, so he decided to save some money for the next month. During tutoring, a student asked him if he had a girlfriend, to which the protagonist replied that he did not and asked him to focus on the study session. After the advisory, he was waiting for the elevator to go to his room. At that time he thinks that making the tutorial boy concentrate is harder than teaching him. He asserts it was so hard to get that job that he can't think about quitting it. He just hoped the boy understood what he was explaining. And despite the boy telling him he should wear other clothes in order to attract the attention of other people, he told himself that even though he didn't have many clothes, it doesn't mean he always wears the same ones. Besides, he thought that every time he stumbled this way, the only thing he promised himself is that he would never hurt anyone. Then suddenly, a guy with a very gangster attitude appears in front of the elevator, and even though the protagonist wasn't very short, the gangster guy completely towered over him. The protagonist wondered if he was an athlete or a model, and didn't believe he was a gangster per se. As the elevator opened, the protagonist quickly exited, commenting that he should return home quickly and do his tasks before sleeping. But as he walked, he tripped, and his tutoring books fell to the ground, causing the gangster to step on them abruptly. Seeing this action, the protagonist wondered if it wasn't too cruel, even though he was the one who dropped them. The next morning, upon leaving his house, a lady called him by his name and told him about always arriving at 10 or 11 p.m., asking if it would be a big issue if he came earlier, like at 8 p.m. The lady exclaimed that he should comply, since she was giving him cheap rent. Nervously, the protagonist said he would be more careful when returning. At work, the protagonist's colleague asked him how it was possible that he wasn't living in a residence and told him he looked dazed that morning, so she wondered if something was wrong. The protagonist replied that it was nothing and that he would be more careful since he was concerned, as the landlady didn't even fix the boiler when it was broken and told him to use an electric pad. The coworker asked if he hadn't suffered much during winter. The protagonist said that he is okay and that the rent is quite cheap. Then the gangster arrives at the restaurant and the protagonist, surprised, wonders if it's the same guy he saw yesterday. The protagonist questions whether he is confusing him with someone else due to the strong presence the gangster has. The protagonist asks the gangster why he is looking at him with such a terrifying face and wonders if perhaps he is having a bad day. The protagonist served the customer soup without perilla seeds and asked if they wanted him to bring them a plate for the child to eat. The customer agreed and the protagonist wished them bon appetit. Then, the boss called the protagonist and asked him to go out to talk about a car parked in front of someone else's store. The boss gave him permission to move it. The protagonist is in the car and wonders if there is no one inside. He then apologizes and asks if there is anyone there. He is in front of our store and the owner asked him to remove his car. Yes, if you are a customer, I can tell you where you should park. If not, there is a parking lot further away, but it's public too. The protagonist looks inside the car and wonders if there is no one there yet. He can't see anything because the window is polarized. He wonders if he will be able to see something if he gets closer like this. Then the bandits arrive and see Ju Yeoman, at which point one of them comments that rat-looking guy, doesn't he work at a nearby store, while the protagonist, upon seeing the bandits, exclaims oh God. After that, a scene of the gangster opens in which a woman enters a building, and the employees whisper if she is the actress Baek So-hee. The gangster's assistant goes to the director and says, "Director." The gangster asks, "What's up?" and the assistant replies that it will be a bad day at work since the president called him for dinner that night. At the meeting, the gangster questions the reason for the dinner and expresses his appreciation for Mr. Park's honesty. Then he comments that he was about to appear in today's articles, but the public relations office blocked it, and adds that he has had enough of girl trouble. Gangster Baek doesn't know what else to say and asks if the announcer is the woman in question and what her name is. Then, he mentions that her name is Chae Hyun and asks that if they are going to take pictures, they should be good, as the current ones are boring. He also comments that it's fun to have a scandal. In the next scene, the president gets angry and tells the gangster that he can't keep living like this, going out with one woman after another, and orders him to end his relationships with women and live a low-profile life. The gangster claims that he doesn't make promises that he doesn't plan to keep, while the president insults him. The assistant asks the president to stay calm. In another scene, the protagonist asks his brother if